Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sports Biz Camps. So right now we will have our Octagon panel. I'm glad everybody is coming in and ushering themselves in. We are in for a really special treat as Octagon works in the agency side of sports and entertainment. And we have our great panelists here, as well as a few people who are able and ready to give you guys a few insights on everything sports and insiding. DeAndrea, would you like to kick us off with introducing everybody? Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, we're 0 for 1. Let's get started, right? Let's get that one out the way. Okay, here we go. Thanks, Scott. And I'll start by introducing myself. I've had the pleasure of working with the people on the panel for a very long time. For some people, almost 13, 14 years. And so we have an extensive and long-standing relationship. But my name is DeAndrea Watson. Everyone calls me D. I'm actually wearing my Sports Biz Cares colored shirt today in support of the organization. I'm a vice president of Octagon. I've been here for about 13 and a half years. I work out of our Charlotte office and oversee our brand partnership experiences group. I have the great fortune of introducing a number of my colleagues and clients who we've had a really long time of working together with. And so with that said, I'm actually going to turn it over to Melissa Woltman to introduce herself. So, hey, Melissa, how you doing?
Hey, Dee, thank you. Looking forward to being on the panel today here and having a great conversation today. I'm originally from Wisconsin, Midwest girl. Currently actually based out in Los Angeles. Made my moves to the West Coast quite a few years ago, loving the sunny weather. I also worked for Octagon alongside Dee and had the pleasure of spending a lot of quality time with him over the past many, many years on our client work. I am a group director and I oversee our Bank of America team in relation to our client engagement work. And we'll probably get into a little bit more detail of exactly what that means, but looking forward to being part of the conversation.
Awesome. Evan, how about you go next?
Hi there, thanks Dee, and excited to chat with everyone today. Hope everyone's doing well in the midst of a global pandemic. Sorry we couldn't do this in person, but appreciate everyone joining. So my name is Evan Hoffman. I'm from the Boston area, although I've lived in Charlotte, Dallas, and Atlanta for over 10 years, but back in Boston and raising our family here. I've been with Octagon for 12 years, somehow the junior member of the three of us, which is to our company. I started in April of 2008 and worked closely with Dee from day one, and was with Melissa in the Chicago Marathon in 2008 when we showed up and nothing was really constructed, and I don't think Melissa slept for 7 days. It was one of the most human feats I've ever seen, and she's had my undying respect ever since. It's been a pleasure to work with her for a lot of my time. I helped to oversee the Bank of America account in partnership with Dee, and I also work with our Korean client Doosan, a name you might not have heard of, but they are an MLB and New York Yankees partner. They've bought a number of different companies in the United States. For those that may see some construction equipment on the side of a road or in a construction site, they own Bobcat, which is a pretty well-known brand, but they're looking to get brand awareness and get their name out in the United States. So been working on those two accounts, and as Melissa said, and I'll echo, really excited to talk to you today.
Awesome. Last but not least, he's not an Octagon employee, but it's an extension of the Octagon family. We're going to turn over to Elliot Cox.
Thank you, Dee. And just to be clear, you're literally paid to say things like that. All of you guys are. So, no, I'm Elliot Cox. I appreciate you guys having me. I'm going to kind of talk to you a little bit about the client side. I work for Bank of America. I'm a senior vice president in our global sponsorship marketing group. I oversee our client engagement, working closely with Melissa as well as Evan and Dee. I also manage both of our endurance and our golf platforms, which we can get into a little bit. I've been with the company, I don't want to date myself too much here, but very close to 18 years here in the fall time frame. It's the only company I've ever worked for. So excited to be here and excited to talk with you guys.
Well, everybody, I just want to put a disclaimer. We are all dinosaurs when it comes to this industry, essentially. and the fact that we've all been in our respective roles, have worked with our respective companies for such a long time, is probably not reminiscent of what a lot of you see within the sports industry now, but it's just an attribute to the organizations that we work with, the people that we work with, and we'll get into that in a little bit later. So let's just go way back. Let's go way back. Let's go back to high school. Melissa, let's take us back to high school and let everyone know kind of what you were thinking about and what was your involvement when it came to sports in general, and how did you get started here?
I will say sports were definitely my life in high school. I was a multi-sport athlete. I was in gymnastics, golf, track and field, and soccer. So I didn't have too much free time outside of sports, that's for sure. I actually ended up being a varsity sport athlete in 3 sports all 4 years, which was a pretty proud accomplishment that I had at the end of my high school career. So I would say too, I mean, for me, it was finding the right balance between, being in sports, going to practices, multiple different practices every single week for different sports at one time, and find that balance between school. There were times where there were a couple of us that we would drive down about an hour to go to gymnastics practice on a Wednesday night every single week. We had practice at 8 p.m. we had practice from 8 till about like 9:30. We got back in the car and we did homework on the way to practice and on the way home. And then went to bed and kind of did it all over again. So I think one of the big things that I learned early on was, the love for sports and the dedication that, kind of really went into it to not only enjoy it and try to find like my level of success, obviously across, the different sports. And I think friendship was another piece that, definitely came out of that too. Some of my really good friends are still, some of my best friends, I should say, we all met through sports, whether it was in high school or college. So it was definitely a very fun time for me and has led me to, I think, really where I am, today.
Yeah. So Melissa is still a multi-sport athlete. Don't let her fool you. She still has the chops, has the goods. Elliot, what about yourself? What sparked your first interest in sports, and kind of what were you thinking about when you were in high school?
Well, Dee, I mean, you've seen me play some sports. I'm not nearly the athlete that Melissa Woltman happens to be. I'll be honest with you, and you got to remember too, when I was in high school, like I'm a dinosaur such that there was no internet even around when I was in high school. I mean, that was still something that was like, that was just the craziest concept ever. But, I knew that very early on. I played a lot of sports. I had a passion for sports. I think, one thing maybe we'll get into during this hour is I didn't know exactly what the career paths really were for sports, right? Because I knew I wasn't going to be a professional athlete, but I wanted to work in the industry. And I have a very strange background, much different probably than the rest of you guys, or certainly than the rest of you guys. And we can get into that a little bit. But, to me, I knew it's where I wanted to eventually end up. And so my journey is a little bit different in that I started in some other areas and kind of migrated there and try to take advantage of some opportunities that were given to me or that I earned, I guess, in some cases, but definitely non-traditional as it goes. But, sports is, again, like, I have maybe the best job in the world. It doesn't even feel like a job to me most days, and I think we're pretty fortunate, or at least I feel like I am in that respect.
Yeah, I can't wait to learn about that non-traditional segue into sports. So we'll get into that.
You got it.
I want to hear what a young Evan Hoffman was doing in high school.
I'll go back even further, D. I'd say my love for sports all emanated from the Boston Celtics. It's actually a cool story. It's really a 3-generation story. My grandfather took my dad to Celtics games in the 60s when he was growing up with Bill Russell and those icons that won 11 championships in 13 years, which I'm pretty confident will never even come close to happening again after we saw the LeBron, D-Wade Heatles, not 1, but 2, but 3. Well, it ended up being 2. And then he took me to the Boston Garden in the 80s to watch Larry Bird and company, 4 Hall of Famers in that starting lineup. And it was a pretty special experience, as you can imagine. The NBA was as hot as it was until this current stretch. And, you know, just watching that spirit of competition and success really, you know, inspired me and really made me sports obsessed. And as Elliot said, we weren't getting our stats off of the internet or smartphones. You were scouring, you know, the sports section every day. You were listening to the radio, and sports talk wasn't even really a thing until, you know, I was probably 12 or 13, and obviously watching, you know, as much sports as I could have been playing. You know, unfortunately, I peaked as a basketball player probably in 6th or 7th grade, never developed a left hand, but did have a high school career as a runner, primarily in cross country, and enjoyed that. It was tremendous, you know, commitment required. As Melissa said, you're out running, you know, 10, 15 miles a day, or doing, you know, grueling track work, but really teaches you a lot about yourself and about perseverance. And again, similar to Elliot, you know, the industry wasn't as well defined 20 years ago as it is now. You know, sports marketing was very much, you know, I would say in its, maybe not infancy, but in its childhood, and it's evolved so much. But I did go to the Indianapolis 500, I believe, when I was in 10th grade with my dad. He was on a business trip, and we were taken around the track and kind of hosted, similar to the work that Elliot and Melissa's teams do. And I saw that that was a job. I met some of the people that were working for that company. I don't remember which one it was, but that was really the first time I realized that you could, quote unquote, work in sports. And from then, that's where the seed was really sown.
Yeah, I mean, so I would be remiss. I did not share at the very beginning what my background was. So I want to add that to the conversation pool as well. I am from Montgomery, Alabama, Roll Tide. Big time Alabama fan. Was born and raised. And for me, just like I think we've all said, from that connective tissue, when it comes to sports, it was just one of those things that brought people together. For me, I would say what really kind of sparked my initial interest within sports was I went to a school where when I transitioned from elementary school to middle school, I transitioned to a private school. And I was the only African-American male in my class. And so before I even started my first day of school, sports was that thing that was that great unifier. It created team camaraderie, connections, bonding with a group of people that I had no idea. As a new person to the school, a little intimidated. So for me, it was that immediate connection. And like Melissa said, created those lifelong bonds. So I didn't know at the time that was something I was going to pursue as a career. And I think a little bit like Elliot, my career was probably a little bit more non-traditional in its start. So let's get into those initial career paths. Evan, I'm going to turn it back to you. You kind of mentioned kind of going to the Indianapolis 500 and seeing this as a career opportunity. What led you to see that and then make that the transition to wanting to find something that you can pursue as a career?
I think for me, and it's funny because I didn't go right into sports. I didn't really pursue it as a major in college. I went to Emory University, was an economics major, and ended up working for a startup for 2 years in the technology space in a sales and marketing role, which turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me because I got so much experience at such a young age. But for me, it was just to be a part of these big events. There's an excitement and there's a passion that is really not found in many other jobs, quite candidly. And I think that's why there are so many people that want to work in sports. And I think it transcends just being a fan of sports. It's, again, a fan of being around sports and everything that represents. There's so much passion amongst the fans, amongst competitors. For years, Octagon's positioning was really around tapping into passion. And, we still have a couple different, ongoing studies and surveys that we do that continually try to isolate why fans are fans of different sports and how they engage with those sports at different moments. But again, for me, and going back to, again, those Celtics games, you know, it's just the emotion that sports evokes. You know, some people will call it the ultimate reality show. There's really nothing like it. The live event experience, and that's, you know, really, you know, and ever more, there's just fewer and fewer of those true, authentic live event moments, and sports owns a very large portion of those right now. So, you know, you kind of get captured and swept away, and you say, how can I have fun in my job and in my career? And, you know, again, I think a lot of people look at sports as that, and, you know, being on site at events in whatever capacity, whether that's hosting clients or customers or, you know, otherwise working, there is an energy and kind of an infectious spirit in the air that, again, you're just not going to get by going into a office high rise every day.
Yeah. You know, Evan, so you mentioned kind of pursuing that economics degree and kind of working that first few years. Elliot, I think this translates well to maybe your non-traditional beginning and kind of working a little bit within the finance standpoint. So how did you make your first introduction into sports as well?
Yeah, so funny enough, I was also an economics major at University of North Carolina, Tar Heels, there, D, for you. You know, it's funny, like, I feel like, and I'd be interested to hear, Evan, what you think about this too. I kind of went into economics because even when I was in high school, like, I'm a numbers guy, like, that comes natural to me. And I feel like I don't want to say wasted time, but I exerted a lot of effort getting degrees and doing things before I made my way to sports because I thought it was what I should do. I think maybe it's what I thought other people thought that I should do, even though I kind of had a passion for sports that eventually, you know, I've made my way around to it, thank goodness. But it's definitely a non-traditional background. And, you know, Evan, you even mentioned, you know, working in high-rise buildings, which I do right now, but I've had a lot of roles in that high-rise building, which, you know, a lot of them were, you know, let's get in at 8, let's get out at 5, and let's not think about it anymore. I think, you know, once you move over into a passion point, whatever that is, it just happens to be sports for us. But whatever that is, I think that's when it ceases becoming, you know, a job, and it turns into a career, and it turns into, you know, a genuine love affair, frankly, that, you know, I think about it and I eat it, I live it, I breathe it, just like everybody, you know, on this call does. You know, it's not a big deal for me to be, you know, on the clock pretty much 24/7. Melissa will attest to this. I mean, there's a lot of times when, you know, we don't have a traditional schedule. But if you're doing what you love, then I think that makes a huge difference, or at least it has for me, because I've never had that. It's funny, I have friends, especially at my age, who have chosen career paths because they, I think, you know, almost fell into it or thought they had to go a certain way because of, you know, their major in school or this or that. And I've heard them tell me, you know, I dread Sunday afternoon and I dread Sunday night because I know I'm going to have to go into the office, you know, on Monday morning. I've heard that from, you know, more than a handful of people. I've never even thought about that the last, you know, 10, 12, 14 years of my life. And I think, you know, as I look at like what I almost wish I would have done from the beginning, I think I wish I would have been kind of true to where my passion really laid. And again, it was, and Evan, you're exactly right. It was that the industry was not as defined as it is now, and the amount of information that folks have access to now, it just, I mean, it's an unbelievable difference. And, you know, hopefully, you know, some of you guys who are out there listening to this, I think you're doing the right things already. You know, I think engage those passions now, and don't do what somebody else thinks that you should do. Do what you know is really in your heart, and I think that'll ultimately lead you where you want to be.
Yeah, that's great. So we have two econ majors who kind of figure their way into the sports world. For me, I was a politics major, but my certificate was in political economics. Actually, no, it's political theory. Scratch the econ connection. However, Melissa, were you also going down the econ track?
I was not. I actually, believe it or not, kind of went more of the traditional route. I, you know, as I mentioned, I've been an athlete all my life. I wasn't ready to be done, you know, in athletics from a participation standpoint until, you know, after college. And even now, I mean, I think I'll always have sports and always be running or doing whatever. But I ended up going to the University of Minnesota up in Minneapolis. I was a member of the Big Ten women's track and field team for all 4 years that I was there. And from that, I mean, could talk for hours about what I, learned and how that has helped, I think, pave my way in so many different ways of where I am today and the leader that I feel like I've, been able to develop into. But I, when I was in high school, I was not exactly sure what I wanted to do. I kind of felt like, business was probably going to be my route. I went to University of Minnesota, had some conversations, did some of those exploratory major conversations and research. And unfortunately for me, the University of Minnesota had a sports management program. They were one of the very few colleges at that time, dating myself quite a ways back as well, that did have a sports management program. And for me, I was like, this is perfect. It ties in my passion, my love for sports and business. And essentially, I went down that track. I'm very glad I did because I was able to take business classes like I wanted to, but with that, sports focus and look through the eyes of sports and what that means, in this regard, so I'm very glad I did, go down that path. And that kind of led me into obviously where I am today and working in sports, and similar to everybody else is like, it's a passion point, right? So it's something that I enjoy going to and working every day. And after college, when I was done competing, I've got the best of both worlds. I still have sports, my normal everyday personal life as a passion point, but also get to go to work and have sports be part of my life. So I think for me, I was a little bit more traditional than the econ side of things. And it just happened to, work out. I know there's been a number of colleges now that do have more sports management focused programs and also master's degrees, which I think is great. And I think too, like, over the past 15 plus years, 15 to 20 years, obviously the industry itself has also really developed in a very different way as well, which is obviously also great. So I had a couple of internships, while I was in college. One of them was with the University of Minnesota Athletics Department. So I got to kind of see it on the inside track, other than being an athlete, from more of the marketing and business side. So I helped them from a marketing aspect and got my hands dirty and did some of the basics and got to really see the insider's look of what it was all about. And from there, I was like, this is what I want to do. And then my junior summer, and then after I had graduated as well, I worked on a nationwide tour event, which has now since been web.com, since now Korn Ferry, the junior league of essentially the PGA Tour. And I literally did anything and everything, right? From helping from a volunteer aspect of recruiting volunteers, managing volunteers on site, going around and, doing course ecology, picking up trash at the end of the day. I mean, it literally, I saw all aspects of what goes in to putting on a professional golf tournament. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And from there on, I just hit the ground running. I did anything and everything I could. I got my hands dirty. I was able to, after, college, started Octagon. I've been at Octagon for almost 15 years. And I've always been learning. I've always been, raising my hand, getting my hands dirty, and figuring out how I can just keep doing more, be a part of putting on some really amazing, events with colleagues and, working with clients such as Elliot. You start to really be part of a family, which is what I know we'll probably get into talking a little bit about agencies, but something that I've really loved being part of an agency.
That's awesome. And so I do want to get my quick college rep in, since everyone was shouting out their colleges earlier. So proud graduate of Princeton University. So go Tigers. With that being said, you mentioned clients, Melissa. We talked about the industry. We want to delve a little further into that part of it. And Scott, I believe that we have a question. So we're actually going to switch this up, answer this question, and then we're going to start to define the definitions of the agency, brand, clients. How does that all work together? So,
exactly. So Tamara Reed actually asked, what are the daily tasks of someone who works in the sports agency? So I believe her question is getting towards, what are your responsibilities and how many different jobs or avenues are within the sports agency?
So I want to turn it over to Evan, because that's actually, I think Tamara was reading our minds, because we kind of were on the same wavelength. So Evan, why don't you describe in general kind of how the sports agency works, Melissa, you can start to share some insights around some of the responsibilities and kind of how your day-to-day looks.
Absolutely, Dee. So I think it's important to maybe define the term first, because I think when people think of agents and agencies, they think about agents. There's been movies, Jerry Maguire and others, but people that represent athletes and try to help them both maximize the contract that they get from their team and also their sponsorships and evermore their, quote unquote brand. Athletes as brands has really taken off in the last 10 years as athletes are now much more able to go direct to the fan and direct to consumer through social media and other means. When we talk about a sports marketing agency, we're really talking about a group of people that function as consultants and advocates for companies that sponsor sports, entertainment, culture, and cause. Those are really the 4 areas that Octagon plays in. So Octagon has about 30 blue chip clients ranging from Bank of America to Allstate to BMW to MasterCard. The list goes on. And we help them really do, I would say, 3 core things. Number 1 is figure out how to spend their sponsorship dollars. Number 2, plan on how to maximize those relationships. And 3 is then actually rolling up our sleeves and doing the execution of those plans. So one term you may have heard is activation. That's really just shorthand for maximizing your sponsorships. So if you think about, when you watch a game, you might see some signs on TV. You might see commercials that accompany a TV broadcast of a game that talk about different initiatives that a company's doing, whether it's selling a product or supporting a good cause. And then if you go to a game, you might see, tents set up in a concourse or outside, displays, that's another way to engage with fans. So to answer the question, the best thing I think about working in an agency is no 2 days are the same. I mean, if you look at the different places you can work in sports, I think if you simplify it, it's either working for an agency, working for a company that sponsors sports teams, athletes, et cetera, or working for the team itself. I would say the agency is probably going to give you the best opportunity to work across a number of different areas. So some days you come in, you have your list, you have your calendar, and you get a call from your client at 8:31, and that becomes your day. I mean, I think the buzzword that has endured across my 18-year career is fire drill. But, every day we are working on behalf of our clients. Melissa, Dee, and I work on behalf of Bank of America to maximize their sponsorship investments. And those can be, again, engaging with consumers, regular, just, the mass audience that's out there, targeting specific groups of customers or clients, or again, trying to shed light and raise awareness for other programs that Bank of America is doing, whether that's charitable works or, supporting other constituencies, like we've done programs for the military or trying to tackle hunger and food insecurity. So again, it's in some ways very similar to those high-res jobs, lots of meetings, lots of brainstorms, writing plans, but in others, it's because our industry is so event specific. There's generally about a 3 to 4 month planning window leading up to a big event. And then there's the execution of that. And then there's the recapping and the debriefing of that. And then the cycle starts again. So it's a very dynamic atmosphere. But I can guarantee no 2 days are ever quite the same.
Yeah, and so Melissa, can you share kind of what your thoughts are from a day-to-day responsibility standpoint, and maybe even take us back to a little bit of the spectrum of when you first were working with Octagon and kind of how your responsibilities were then versus kind of what you do now?
Yeah, I think it definitely varies, and I absolutely agree with Evan. Like, no single day is necessarily the same, and I think that's what keeps us, excited. Is you're going to have a different day every single day. So of course there are going to be some things that you do of writing documents or different types of planning. There's going to be monotonous and the same type of processes. But at the same time, there's always something a little bit different about it. Even when you're planning an event, say you've worked on an event, there's been a few where I've maybe worked on them for 4 years in a row, an annual event every single year. And each time that you go through that planning process, one of the benefits is you get to learn from what you've done the year before and figure out, oh, how can I make this better? But at the same time, every single year is always going to be different. So even if you're working on some of the same exact programs, there are differences. But I would say too, taking me back to when I first started, I traveled a lot. I think that's definitely a piece as well. And especially at a young age, I loved that. It was perfect. I got to see practically the entire country with, a couple of the first roles that I had when I started at Octagon. And a lot of it for me, coming out of college, I was thrown right in. I think that's something also I loved about working at an agency, working at Octagon. It's, are you ready? Okay, let's go. And, they let me handle as much as I could handle. And I kept asking for more. And, it's anything from, planning events and having conversations with, catering vendors or, figuring out gifting for a particular gift, to, having conversations with, the properties. There's something always a little bit different, like I said, with every event. And I'd be able to then, I think one of the pieces I love the most, especially starting out, is I'd get to see the process from the very beginning stages of creating and developing what an event was going to be, through the planning of it, through the actual on-site execution and going on site and helping bring everything to life. And then wrapping up after. I saw everything from every single stage. And I think with different pieces in business or, different industries too, you don't always get to see that live and firsthand and be there for every single step of the way. And, what we do with our team too, we have everybody jump in. And everybody has their different pieces of ownership, but also at the same time, we're working together as a team to pull things off. There is not, in a single event that we do, that we just have one person or even sometimes two people doing an event. It is a group of people that work together, bring our expertise, bring our love and passion for sports and events, our relationships that we've built, whether it's with the properties, like MLB, with the Dodgers, for example, and then also with our clients to kind of put on an event that you have some of those guests leaving and thanking you for like an amazing once in a lifetime experience. And, for us, there's the benefit of we also get to experience it to a certain degree too. Granted, we're the ones putting on, but it's a different type of enjoyment and satisfaction when you're done with that event. Is I just made that person's day and I just helped, my client, Bank of America, build a stronger relationship with them and continue to, host them at future events and be, a part of their experience. So goes to say there's a lot of different pieces, but I think there are a lot of really amazing things that come out of, what we do.
Yeah, echo everything you and Evan have both said, Melissa. We're getting a lot of questions in the chat, but before we kind of start to answer those questions, I want to throw it over to Elliot because we've talked a lot about from a sports marketing agency side, and really if you think about from a how do sports agencies or sports marketing agencies work with brands, kind of what that perspective is from that side. But I want to flip it, Elliot, and turn it to you. And how do you work with an agency like Octagon, and how do we collectively work together from your perspective? And you can give us the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, all of it.
Well, thanks, Dee. I think that, let's start with the bad and let's get that out of the way real quick. Melissa's probably lost count of the number of times she's had to join a meeting at 5:30 a.m. LA time because it's 8:30 in Charlotte, and hey, it's the client's day has begun. So that's probably the bad part from her perspective. No, I think, when this works correctly, and I'll be honest, I've been around long enough to know like some agency client relationships work, and I've seen some that don't work as well. But I think when it works correctly, we've mentioned the word family, I think a couple times, and I think that's the way certainly that we look at you guys. I mean, it takes a village, as they say, and there's, as an example, I mean, there's only 7 people in our sponsorships group at Bank of America, and there's 7 people that are the goal here is to activate and entertain clients across, basically every major sporting event going on in the U.S. Plus, we have to activate, partnerships across Major League Baseball, across the National Football League, in the golf space. We own a couple of endurance events. So we're doing a lot of things. 7 people cannot begin to do that job. I know on the Octagon side, we're supported by, you guys know the exact number, probably 40 plus people that help us bring all of that to life. So that's the reason I say, it takes a village, and it takes, we rely on you guys for your subject matter expertise and frankly, the breadth and depth of resources that you bring to the table, because we're focused on what we're trying to do. We're focused on, the partnerships that we have, meeting the goals and objectives, frankly, of our businesses within the bank, which are very demanding. Melissa talked a little bit about, going to events and seeing, are the clients delighted? Are the bank's clients delighted as well? That translates into money for us. Let's just be very candid about it. The share of wallet is what they call it. But, if we have 5 of your dollars today, we want 6 of your dollars tomorrow to manage it in some way, right? And that's how the bank is going to make money. And so this all kind of connects together. But for us, we certainly couldn't do it, without you guys. And I think the relationship in a healthy, functioning relationship, there's back and forth here. We don't always agree, which I think is part of this too. And I think healthy dialogue, and that's something that our executive, I think, is maybe his best management trait, is you can always challenge the guy. He's always willing to, I don't want to say argue, but he'll constructively talk through anything with us and with you guys too. And I think that's all part of that relationship. It's very symbiotic. And again, when it works well, I think it works really well, which it does in this case, certainly from our side.
So we've gotten a lot of questions in the chat, very active group that's chatting right now. And, Scott, I think they've asked some questions about skills, right?
Yes. So let me pull that up real quick since there's so many of them. Yes. So what skills do you think benefit you the most within your position?
Yeah, I can start. And I would say, as you think about skills, these are things that are developed over time, right? And so as you continue to mature, to grow, you're not going to know everything in high school. It would be amazing if you did, but that's not what the expectations are. So I think when you're really thinking about what sets people up for success is that, do they have a great mental attitude? Are they willing to learn? Are they willing to, can they be dependable? Can they be trusted? And it's kind of creating your foundation of building blocks. If they say they're going to do something, do they actually do it? That's like, to be honest with you, that's one of the most fundamental things that you can start to develop early on in your career. And I think that those foundational building blocks are extremely important in developing trust, and developing an overall just broad base of skills that will continue to translate for you to add on to more refined and higher developed skills. So I think those foundational core skills are extremely important and this is not just for this industry. This is for any industry that you want to pursue.
Yeah, I'll pick up on that, D. I think, candidly, a lot of the skills to be successful in business are the same to be successful in sports. Being a good team player, being flexible, adaptable, as Dee said, showing up on time, bringing your best effort every day, being, really cognizant and sensitive of those around you, understanding that, you're part of a larger group. And then, Jalen Rose has a great expression, will and skill. And I think you need both, but you can always control your effort. And I think, especially starting out as you start to gain skills, both, expertise and knowledge, but also, continuing to refine how you present yourself and your work, having that effort, and showing that effort is going to go a long way, because it is a differentiator, especially, starting out, in sports, you're going to work long days, some nights. Elliot did early mornings, late nights, weekends, and it's just, being able to keep going and push through. Again, that can really be especially early in your career, even starting out, in the internship realm, a differentiator versus your peers.
So, Elliot, I know you're thinking about characteristics here.
Yeah, I mean, I think, from my standpoint and what has helped me personally, you guys, by the way, are completely right. And a lot of this applies not only to sports, but to business in general. But I think, the ability to network and build really strong relationships. I mean, there no matter what job you get into or career industry, there are close-knit circles. Sports is incredibly close, and you'll see folks ping pong, from one organization to the next, whether it's, they're working for the Rockets, 1 year, but they're working for the, the Nuggets 2 years later. And again, that's and the same thing is with, with clients and with agencies and with teams. Those relationships are all interconnected. So I would say, to the extent that you can build really strong relationships, I think that's helped me personally. You also want to be confident but not arrogant. I think at the same time, I think there's a fine balance there sometimes, but you want to have a presence about you that projects, professionalism, and that frankly you belong in the room, right? Because you got to remember the jobs that we're very fortunate to have, the roles that we have, and the day that I decide to step away, there will be a line around the block to have my job, and I'm very cognizant of that every single day when I wake up. I'm very fortunate to have, the role that I do have, and I better stay, hungry and humble, as they say, right? Because there's a lot of people that would do this, the minute I decide that I wanted to do something else, or that they had me do something else. So I think those are a couple of things, as I look at it. Definitely, you want to keep that passion. You want to work hard. You want to stay organized too. There's, you don't want to be scattered. I think there's a lot of moving pieces, particularly with what we do. And so those are at least a few things that I feel like are skills that are helpful.
Melissa, any additional skills or characteristics from
I think you guys covered most of it, but I would also say always be learning. I think that's something that no matter where you are in your career, I'm still learning new things today. Especially given our current environment right now, we're all going through things we've never gone through before and trying to figure out how we can adjust and figure out what to do next and what is the right approach. So always be learning, no matter whether you're in high school or whether you've had a career for 20 plus years. So whether that's, studying, reading, listening to podcasts, just staying current on things, I think it's really important. And I would also, second everything that everybody said, but also I think communication and, open, honest, transparent are just a few things too that I think can go a long way. Continue to stick with, what you believe is right, and, understanding, how to keep things moving forward.
That's great.
Do we mind if
the next question?
Yeah, definitely. So Ethan had asked, I'm sorry, can high school students find quality internships and how to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, I would throw it up to the group, but I think absolutely yes. I think, looking at involving yourself where your local spheres of influence are. So, right, if you're in school, in high school, become involved with your school's athletic department if they have one. If you're part of a local city, there are typically a lot of opportunities who are to just be involved in a particular venue or working for a particular team, even if it's working in those concession stands, right? My career started within minor league baseball. That was my kind of crash course into the industry. And there's a lot of organizations across the country where you can start and really gain some just baseline experience from organizations that may not necessarily be the professional leagues, but the minor leagues are a great breeding ground for getting people a lot of junior experience. And so, and again, it may be working at concession stands for a summer, but you're starting to build those reps, becoming involved with how those organizations work, understanding the nature of those facilities and groups. And so I think those are the types of opportunities. And that you can continue to look for, especially when you're at the high school age.
And do you mind elaborating a little more on what you can do at the college level?
I'm going to let somebody else answer the college level. Maybe Melissa, because you're actively involved from a college perspective in your career.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's always about, I say this across a number of different conversations I have in different topics, but it's about finding that right balance, right? Because you want to make sure you enjoy your college career, continue to study, keep focused on that if you're doing any form of athletics, figure out what the right balance is. But, for me, it was during the summer where I was able to, whether it was a volunteer opportunity, my, time with the University of Minnesota Athletics Department was volunteer, where I was like, I wanted that experience and opportunity. So they, I went and had the conversation and was like, hey, would you guys be willing to give me, a chance here to get involved and get some more experience? And they're like, absolutely. So they were able to kind of create that opportunity for me just by going in and asking and having the conversation. Granted, yes, I know I was an athlete, so it may have made it a little bit easier to already have a foot in the door. But that doesn't mean that that's the only reason I also got it. If I would have just been a normal student and like, hey, I'm interested, I want experience, they were happy to have somebody else, have come in and help be at an event and help manage some things or stuff tickets or do whatever it was. And for me, it started from there to like start learning those little basic things. And even today, you still are going to do basic things, right? So I think it's about trying to carve out, find out where those opportunities might be, whether it's going to be at your college or a local country club, and maybe they're doing events or a charity events coming up, and get involved with the charity and help. I think that's probably a big area where, during the summer, maybe not this summer, but hopefully in the future, there's charity golf tournaments that happen all the time, and they're always looking for people to help. And, there's going to be lots of opportunities there to get involved with understanding how to, put on events. And that is a lot of what we also do at Octagon. And a lot of what my day-to-day work is, and Elliot's on our client engagement team, of where we're creating these high-end experiences, straight out our events to host people. So those initial kind of ways of getting involved will help get you that framework to you understand how to put on an event.
Yeah, Elliot or Evan, any additional thoughts from your guys' end?
I mean, I'll say for a second, I think Melissa hit the nail on the head. I mean, I can tell you, the first job I ever had was at a golf course for a couple of years, where frankly, I washed carts and worked in the pro shop and things like that. And I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, when you're 15, 16 years old. But when you look back on it, you're starting to build the beginning of a resume where you're associated with sports even in some way. And back to the previous question about skills, I did want to mention too, like, I think part of this is, and part of what we're getting at too, is be willing to do anything. If somebody, if you volunteer for a golf tournament or whatever, and they ask you to pick up trash on the 14th hole, then go be the best trash picker upper you can possibly be and have a great attitude about it. I think attitude is a huge thing. Everybody on this call has done things that they didn't feel like doing to get to where they are now. And I think that's a big piece of, there's no entitlement here. You have to earn each step on the ladder, each rung on the ladder. And I think, some people, frankly, and I talk to people who say they want to work in sports, and then I never hear from them again, or they say they want to do this and that, and they're not willing to really do it. So, and that's okay, by the way. It's just, at some point, the people that are willing to take some of these steps and do some of these things that others are not, that's where you're going to get, that's what's going to bear fruit at the end of the day. Even for those of us, and I did a lot of that, frankly, because of a non-traditional background that was not in sports. And that's how I, volunteer for all kinds of different events, golf events, charity events, community events, get your name out there a little bit, because if you do a great job, people always want to hire folks or have volunteers that do a great job. If that's one thing you don't have to worry about, as an organizer of an event, you'll always take that. So, regardless of what age you are, high school, college, there are always going to be opportunities in your community to get involved with events and sports in some way. I would encourage folks to take advantage of that and knock it out of the park and have a great attitude about it. And that will get you some positive momentum.
Scott, what's your next question?
Gotcha. So I was just about to tell you guys that we have about 10 minutes left. And if there are any further questions, go ahead and ask. And if not, I would like all of our panelists to provide one piece of advice they truly believe in or live their life throughout.
Yeah, I don't mind starting. Actually, Evan, we haven't heard from you in a while. Why don't you go next?
Yeah, I think, and it's something I've started to say more, and, you know, I think it's something I wish someone told me in high school, is start finding your voice now. And what I mean by that is, you know, and it's going to take time. It's going to take, you know, experiences and maturity, but, you know, figure out what your authentic self is and how you authentically feel like you can present yourself in a professional setting. Because when you feel most authentic is when you're going to be most effective. And I think the roadmap to do that is three things. Number one, find your passion. Again, take some time, may take some fits and starts, some dead ends. But I think, you know, when you found your passion, when you're doing something for a while and you look down at the clock and, you know, 45 minutes, an hour, 3 hours has gone by, that probably means you found something you like. Number two, find your community, whether that's mentors or people that, you know, you share, you know, a like-minded approach with, people that can support you and help you grow. And, you know, it can be, again, someone that provides, you know, kind of concrete career advice, or it can be a peer that may just, you know, be farther down the line in terms of figuring out both who they are and, you know, who they want to be. And then I think the last thing that I'll say, which really kind of, you know, ties into finding your voice, is kind of find your, you know, your inspiration. There's never, as Melissa said, there's never been more access to information. And there's so many great sources of information right now, from books to podcasts. You don't have to read a book anymore. You can just listen to it on, you know, Audible or whatever. But really, you know, seek out different, you know, business leaders and thought leaders and, you know, spiritual leaders, religious leaders, et cetera, and really, you know, listen, read, educate yourself across all sorts of topics, you know, business leaders. And, you know, as Melissa said, never, ever stop learning. And so I think those three things together will help you find your voice. And again, you know, I'm 41 years old. If I'm being honest, it's really been in the last 2 or 3 years that I've really felt like I'm starting to get it figured out. So it does take time, but keep working at it and use the resources that you have. Again, whether those are informational or you know, people that you can tap into.
Elliot, what would you tell a young Elliot Cox if you could?
Yeah, I think I hit on a little bit of this earlier. I think, well, number one, he should have worked on his jump shot a lot more than he did. That's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
But you know, I think it's and Evan, you kind of hit on this just a little bit, but it's really kind of just being true to yourself and trying, have as many experiences as you need to start to figure this out. I mean, I remember in high school, I had no idea, you know, what I wanted to do. I liked sports, but, you know, again, I kind of went a path that I thought maybe I should go and that I thought maybe other people thought I should go. And I think, you know, if I had it to do over again, I would probably, you know, I would probably do things a little bit differently in that respect. And it's worked out for me because I kept pushing and kept, you know, reaching for the ultimate goals that I had personally. But it takes a long time. I mean, Evan said, you know, it's really been in the last couple of years. I mean, it's, you know, it was a nearly 10-year journey for me coming out of college before I really started working in the things that I wanted to work in. And that took several different roles before that and several different transitions. So, you know, I think stay focused though on what you believe, you know, you're capable of and what you're going to be good at and where your passion point is, but be patient with it because it may take some time. It may not happen overnight, but I think if you're really true to yourself and you're true to what your passions are, you try some different things, have some different experiences, then chances are things will turn out the way you want them to.
Great. Melissa, how about you? What would you tell young Melissa Woltman?
I mean, that's hard to follow with both of them, but I would agree with all those same sentiments. I think it's continuing to, be true to yourself and your passions. And again, if it's that love for sports, it's love for sports. If it's, something else that you're passionate about, spend that time and energy on that if that's what makes you happy. I think it's also about finding that right balance with everything. And I think, for me, it's being confident in yourself and confident in your decisions. And you're not always going to do it right the first time. And that's okay. Sometimes you are, and that's obviously exciting and wonderful, but learn from those mistakes and figure out how to do it better the next time. And that's just going to continue to make you better at, whether it's your job, being a good friend, anything in both kind of your personal and professional life. But I would say, just go after those dreams, continue to set those goals, and make those goals a little higher than what you think you might also be able to reach, and you might surprise yourself. I think that anything is reachable.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone has said. 3 things I would add is to be intentional with your time. We only have so much time to do the things that we want to do, right? But the sooner that you start to figure out what you like and what you don't like, the sooner you're going to be able to put yourself in a position to really accelerate and kind of grow. The next thing I would say is just you got to start getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think we all tend to gravitate towards the things that we're good at, and we always want to be cognizant of our passion and our interests, right? But you also want to challenge yourself to kind of step outside of your comfort zone, to push forward to doing something, different, and really pushing yourself, because growth is not easy, and it's not something that comes to most people very naturally, right? So definitely start to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And then the last thing I would say is, and this is something that I've seen a lot more recently, but it's definitely emblematic of people across our industry, but across all industries, is that be curious. Really think about things from a different perspective. Like, ask those questions. For me, there was a period of my life where I felt like asking questions wasn't, it betrayed my sense of understanding or my projection of what I knew. But that was just feeding into an ego. Like, ask questions, be comfortable with asking questions, because that's how you actually get different perspectives and different answers, and really just a whole new realm of really understanding that you may not have been previously privy to. So, well, Scott, I know that we are at the bottom of the hour, and there's still some questions that we didn't answer.
And I'm really sorry to everybody whose questions we were not able to reach out to, but please do utilize LinkedIn. Follow our panelists on LinkedIn. I'm sure they're more than happy to help you out, and definitely help you get your questions answered. And one day you can be in their shoes. But definitely stay tuned. At 4 p.m. we have our last locker room chat at the end of the day. And if you guys have any other further questions, you can send them to info@sportsbizcamps.com. Thank you guys. I think it went pretty well. You guys have any last words before we end it?
Yeah, just echoing what you said. Happy to connect with anyone following this, and feel free to reach out with any questions you have.
Yeah, I would say use this platform. You have 3 days to talk to some of the best and brightest in our industry. You have their names, reach out to them, use the platform, because everyone is extremely generous of their time, because we all understand and we all were in your shoes at one point or another. So definitely, we definitely want to pour out our support to this group and continue to support the next generation of sports marketing industry giants. So
yeah, I agree. Enjoy it, listen, learn, and thanks for having us today. Hopefully we helped you, and look forward to hopefully seeing you all out there soon.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And thank you everyone who attended. All right. So I'll see you guys soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.